Welcome back to Backwoods Teacher Productions. Today's lesson is on post-Civil War Reconstruction of the South under Presidents Lincoln, Johnson, and eventually President Grant. The Reconstruction era should have been an era full of opportunity and success for the nation, but it proved to be a huge failure, full of corruption and violence. The American Civil War cost the nation an estimated $6 billion. This is approximately $81 billion in today's currency. On a positive note, the Civil War caused an industrial revolution. It brought about a final shift from agriculture to industry in America. The South, however, had collapsed. The South's economy had been predicated on agriculture. Prior to the war, 6 of the 10 wealthiest states in the United States were found in the South. After the war, not one southern state was even in the top half. The end of slavery and damage done to plantations resulted in a 60% loss of the wealth in the South. Only 126 banks remained open in the South following the Civil War. There's a huge amount of damage to the labor force and a gross lack of leadership. 25% of the white male population was dead following the war. There were 500,000 white males unemployed. Many of these were severely crippled with war injuries. The political leaders were all ex-Confederate officers, which meant that they should not hold political office. Many of them went on to do just that, though. There were 4 million slaves who were now freedmen. But now what? What to do? What ways to help them? What about land rights? What about civil rights? What about voting? Take a minute to give you a chance to write this information down. Okay. Reconstruction refers to the time period following the Civil War. Reconstruction refers to the rebuilding and readmitting of the South to the Union. One of the problems that the government faced was that there were no rules in the Constitution for secession, let alone rejoining the Union after secession. So the government did what it does best. They fought about it amongst themselves. They fought over which branch should be in charge. Should it be the President, Congress, or the Supreme Court? They fought about how to go about readmitting the South. Should they make them take a loyalty test? Should they punish them? How should they fund the repairs that the South needed to get functioning again? Other difficult questions arose. Again, the rights of the freedmen. The 13th Amendment ended slavery, but how to go about protecting them now was a big question. How much help and protection would they need? Many in the North disagreed over this, and many in the South definitely disagreed over this. Radical Republicans in the North wanted the freedmen to have the full backing of the government. These freedmen were now in competition with poor whites for jobs. Many of these jobs that they were in competition for were the same jobs that they would have had before on the plantation. The radical Republicans wanted to provide the freedmen with land, which is a fine idea and probably would have solved a lot of problems. One of the issues, though, was what land to give them, whose land to give them. Voting was another issue. Finally, one of the remaining issues was citizenship and voting for the former Confederates. Southern society was quite rigid. and the leaders that were found in Southern society were Confederate States officers and the former plantation owners. There really were not other leaders. These men were it. Okay, we have several questions here. Fortunately, this has been printed out for you and you have the questions since the top one has been cut off. But the top question says, why was Lincoln's plan so lenient on the South? The next question is, how did Johnson's Reconstruction plan follow and differ from Lincoln's? The third question is, what effects did the Reconstruction Act of 1867 have on the South? And the fourth question, why was Andrew Johnson impeached? And finally, the fifth question, what were the 14th and 15th Amendments, and why were they passed? These questions should be answered with at least 2 sentences. Complete sentences would be nice so that you sound like an intelligent, sentient creature rather than just a teenager text messaging. The next activity we have outlined for you today here at Backwoods Teacher Productions is a comparison of the 3 plans of Reconstruction: Lincoln's plan, Johnson's plan, and the Congressional plan known as the Wade-Davis plan. I would like you to describe how each of these plans addressed each of the categories on the left. How did they provide for amnesty and pardons? What did they expect in the way of loyalty from the Southerners? What percentage was needed to vote or take this oath? What were the rights provided for the freedmen, and what kind of reactions or problems did they run into from other people, such as white Southerners or the radical Republicans in the North? This is a list of the vocabulary that we need to know for this section. At the top is 13th Amendment, which has been cut off, and there are several on the bottom which have also been cut off. But you need to know what each of these people or events or things had to do with Reconstruction. Okay, this is some review for that vocabulary. The first question we'd like to use has also been chopped off, but we will read it for you anyway. Number 1, we really wanted to punish the South and guarantee protections and rights for the freedmen. Oh, and we really hated Andrew Johnson. Number 2, I was president after Lincoln. I was against slavery and wanted to punish former wealthy slave owners, but I really didn't do much to help the freedmen. People were disappointed in me. Number 3, this outlaws slavery and servitude. Number 4, I was an outspoken senator from Pennsylvania and the leader of the radical Republicans. Number 5, this says all persons born in the United States are citizens. Number 6, this was created by Congress to help the poor of the South by creating schools and hospitals. Number 7, this was a series of laws that restricted the civil rights of the freedmen. And number 8, the radical Republicans used this to remove Andrew Johnson for violating the Constitution. Yes, there are only 8 questions and more options. Sorry. And some more review. Why was Lincoln's plan so lenient on the South? And we are going to pick an individual from the audience to read through the options. Number 2, how did Johnson's Reconstruction plan follow and differ from Lincoln's? Again, we will select one lucky person from the audience to read the options for us, and then somebody else to give us the answer. And number 3, what effects did the Reconstruction Act of 1867 have on the South? Alright, these 2 questions are designed for somebody who wants a challenge in class and would like to be able to explain them. Why was Andrew Johnson impeached? What were the 14th and 15th Amendments? Why were they passed? And a bonus for people that watch the Backwoods Teacher lessons outside of class. Here's the information on President Lincoln's plan. Lincoln's plan was known as the 10% plan. It offered a proclamation of amnesty, which means forgiveness, and Reconstruction. It promised to replace majority rule with loyal rule in the South. If people in the South declared loyalty, that group would be the ones voting. Lincoln did not consult Congress regarding Reconstruction. He promised a pardon to all but the highest-ranking military and civilian Confederate officers. When 10% of the voting population in the 1860 election had taken the oath of loyalty and established a government, it would be recognized again as a state and readmitted. Look, yet another bonus. Here's the Wade-Davis plan, created by Wade and Davis. This plan was a lot more strict than Lincoln's plan. It required 50% of the number of the 1860 voters to take an ironclad oath of allegiance. It required a state constitutional convention before the election of state officials. And most specifically, this bill protected or attempted to protect the liberties of the freedmen. And this is a preview of what we will talk about next time. Thank you very much for listening.